Mea Nore, Jimmy Kyle. My name's Jimmy Kyle. I'm a proud Thungutti man. I'm a punk. I'm a musician, and I front and songwrite for Chasing Ghosts. And I'm stoked to be talking to Kris.
Beautiful, mate. You forgot one thing there too. You're an all-round good bloke as well, buddy. You
Oh,
forgot to
bless.
mention that.
I paid you $50 to say that, but I appreciate it. Thanks.
No worries at all, brother. So we're here today to speak about the fact that Chasing Ghosts will unleash your new album Therapy on
Yeah.
May the 16th, bro. So how you feeling about it?
Super excited now. Now that the work's all done, and it's all the composing and the creating film clips and thematics and it starts off as small ideas and now it's like finally at the end and it kind of felt like it would never happen. It was going for a while, as all Chasing Ghost records tend to. And yeah, I'm just super excited to share it with people.
Tell us a bit more about this one from a musical point of view. What you're going for, bro?
I think it's definitely a lot more upbeat, and as you know, the sort of Chasing Ghost story is, I guess, um, acoustic punk troubadour leaves hardcore music and goes solo, and then it's sort of come full circle where it's like it's a heavier record. It's sonically a lot more polished than and bigger than anything we've done before, and they felt like really like the next progression. Coming out of Homelands, the next progression was kind of like, where can this go? And so we'd sort of done a real lo-fi kind of very Melbourne sounding mix for Homelands, and then Therapy is a very produced, very shiny is the word that I tend to use, kind of polished record. And it was a real pleasure to do something different because I'd always had a history in recording the earlier records, sort of like in the analog way. So now have we not only moved into the digital realm finally, but we've moved into it sort of with no rules, just leaning right into a modern process. And so we could give some contrast and personality difference between the other releases.
Very cool. And you've released the singles Chamomile Tea, My Big Gay, 10 Feet Tall, and Amnesia, everybody. So I know it's hard with you guys because you've covered so much ground musically, but would you say those four represent the album sonically?
Yeah, sonically for sure. My Bing Eye probably has a slightly it's got some strings in it, which have always been on Chasing Ghost records. Often there's string sections, so big string arrangement, which is really awesome. Chamomile Tea's a real kind of bit of an indie sort of influence coming through, bit of a punk indie influence coming through. But yeah, sonically they all feel like that. And I think like the earlier singles, Amnesia Everybody, it's kind of like sounds a bit like Homelands on steroids. It's a bit jacked up. It sort of has a modern Midnight Oil kind of chug along drums behind it, and then 10 feet tall is just look out. It's right in your face. Here we go.
When you choose your singles, do you choose them to sort of try and cover all those different aspects of your music, or do you more choose them with what you feel the better material?
I tend to try and step out of that process a bit more these days and let my management, my team around me give me their feedback, and I sort of balance that with my own perspectives. But yeah, my between the label and my management, I sort of really trust their thoughts around it because I have biases as the writer, as the singer. I have some biases around what I would think, uh, because sometimes you want to choose what's enjoyable to play,
Yeah,
maybe not
right.
necessarily what's enjoyable for the listener as their priority. So. Yeah, I just let those who have been in the industry for a long time, knowing what they do, let them do their process, and I leave the rest up to the audience.
Yeah, cool. Now there was one line in the press release that I found really interesting. It said Kyle found himself writing without the rule book of his previous work. Like, can you elaborate on that for us?
Sorry. When I did Confessions from a Phone Booth, the first record when it was really very much still a solo project, we mixed to tape, we mastered to tape, so reel to reel, old school style, analog, no beat detectors, no computers used at all until
Right.
the very last process, which is mandatory that it goes through
Mhm.
at the very end. Um, so we essentially made records the way you would make them in the 70s. And I did that for the first record. The second record was a hybrid, so I used tape again for the rhythm section, which is something people did a lot in the 90s and even a couple of people still doing it in the noughties, maybe. But it would be probably 20 years since someone's bothered to do that. So that's how I did the I Am Jimmy Kyle record. And then the Homelands and Therapy records were about really leaning into what a producer can bring to the table outside of songwriting per se, but just lots of really tasty little Easter eggs, little ear candy moments, the shiny, polishy stuff that we used to listen to on a lot of American records. And so this is sort of the first time saying, I'm not going to do this sort of stripped back Billy Bragg DIY, you know, Mr. Authenticity to the point that it's nearly dogma and sort of move into it's okay to use lots of modern things. So things like if I think for the first three records, there's been no auto tune ever used on my
Oh,
vocals.
wow.
And I'm not a great singer, but it just requires that you sing until you get it right. And in a studio, once upon a time, you might have had the budget or the time to do that. And it might take, several takes to get there. So there's a faster process now. And, people, you might have a really good take, it performed really well, and then you've got perhaps a word that's slightly out of time, and they can come in now and like pull that into time and say, "Hey, keep that take. It was actually the only thing about it was this, and we've just nudged it." In the past, I would have said, "Nah, let's redo it until it's
Right.
perfect." And for the listener's experience, to convey the idea, it's probably not necessary today. And I think a lot of young people have always lent into that process of just like, oh,
All
this
that
is
known.
like, it's faster. I can just do
Mhm.
it this way. And it was new for me. It was new for me. When I'd left playing punk hardcore and I went solo, I wanted to um, write records with my ears, not in the computer with my eyes. I wanted to and record with my ears, not with my eyes, and I wanted to enjoy music again and play it from the heart. And so that's why they were such like love projects with all this extra sort of stuff. And I feel like the only people who probably really value that are other muso nerds and geeks, producer nerds and geeks. But I think it's important to understand that for a new generation, um, they've been listening to Triple J squash, and really beautifully
Fresh,
mixed
yeah.
and mastered records, and squash them in an MP3 on our national distributor, which like takes away a lot of the work.
Mhm.
And then with a generation that's grown up with AirPods or ear headphones, and earphones or headphones rather, and not hearing records the same way that we used to hear them. So the mixes are different now, and what we aim for is a little bit different now. So it's just kind of letting go of a lot of old ideas. And feeling like, well, that's a space I could find growth by leaning into lots of new ideas. And so I did. And here we
That's
are.
so cool. But the suckable thing about that is this new generation wouldn't either even know or appreciate what you've done with all that stuff because they don't know any better.
Well, this generation only remembers Anthony Curtis as a good singer. Everyone else before auto-tune remembers that if Anthony Kiedis, not Curtis, rather. Anthony Kiedis could hit a note on his first several records. It was an achievement. Um, and it works. It works, but he's flat. 90% of the
Yeah.
time he's flat. And that would have taken a lot of EQing and it would have taken a lot of getting the performance right. And then we hit one hot minute with the introduction of Melodyne and
That
changing vocals.
that's got nothing to do with it. That's got nothing to do with it. Come on.
And suddenly his pitch is perfect. Is there anything wrong with that? No, I don't think there is, but it's just the progression of what we're capable of doing the
Of course,
same job much, much faster and therefore cheaper.
but not necessarily better.
That is also the other side of things.
Now, I noticed there's no actual song on there called Therapy, mate. So it's obviously got to have a bit deeper meaning. So is the album more therapy for yourself as a writer and like maker, I guess, or is it more for us listening to it?
Oh, well, the old adage is that music is therapy. And I think for a lot of artists and listeners, that's exactly what a lot of people think of it as therapeutic. Whether it's metal and punk hardcore and you're screaming your lungs out, or getting a Sarah McLachlan record and a glass of wine and crying your eyes out. But they're all therapeutic in some sort of way. There's a catharsis that happens where we can expel some of our emotions that we carry. So I think in that adage sense, it rings true. For me, it was about actually the first time going to therapy post some massive changes in my life, and um, I think that sort of this record was like the unpacking of lots of ideas and problems and thoughts that were on my mind, and some of them are really like interpersonal things, like falling out with longtime friends and sort of, stuff that we all go through in life at different points. And some things were more systemic things, things like amnesia, everybody sort of talking to a more of a systemic issue in Australia around the cult of forgetfulness, not cognizant of where we are and how we've all got here. Um, yeah, and so it depends on the track. 10 Feet Tall is a very introspective track about me literally having my first conversations with the therapist, hence the lines, write it down, tell me everything you think you know that you've figured out about me. And um, so it was literally like sitting down with my therapist for the first time and making some inroads and expelling some stuff. And that was the idea, is like, I thought I was 10 feet tall and it turned out I wasn't. And even the best of us can fold. We're not all perfect. And so that's sort of, then we get to songs like Chamomile Tea, which are about having struggling with insomnia for a really long period of time. My Bing Eye is um, a song really that was about um, the domestic violence issues across multiple all ethnic communities with men, and it was coming from a place of um, there's probably a lot of people who have done things that they wish they hadn't done and would like to potentially change, and that there is some redeemable quality within that person that should be noted, not just thrown in the pile of you're a bad person and there's no way out of that. So it was sort of this song that was talking to men about change behavior and recognizing that she's not your therapy. So, that woman's not your therapy. Go and do the work. It's not for you to put your hands on her. It's for you to use your feet, put your hands in your pockets, use your feet, walk out of the situation and start doing the work on yourself, break the cycles that most people who perpetuate violence have themselves unfortunately been the victims of, usually as children. So it's sort of the whole record was very considered about the issues that were approached. And there's some songs that people here in the very near future, that discuss the survivor's guilt and struggle when losing friends to suicide, and friends that you've really actively tried to engage to prevent the unaliving of themselves, and these sort of yeah, these conversations have all been really confronting conversations, but there were conversations that I was dealing with personally as well as dealing with systemically in some
Right.
circumstances.
Right. Now, along those lines, bro, like the one constant thing with chasing ghosts and all your music is your honesty and your courage in writing about subjects and events that other people shy away from. Like, do you think your messages and your words are starting to sink in on a broader, deeper level?
I wonder whether I'm preaching to the choir. I went to a Midnight Oil show with Tasman Keith, and Taz was rapping in the show, and I was surprised because I heard when I was in the audience, I heard some ignorant comments, not about Taz, but just ignorant comments about Indigenous people were made, and I just thought, wow, like Midnight Oil's made it really clear for a really long time about what they're singing about, and yet there are diehard fans here that still haven't quite got
Yeah,
it.
right.
So that was a really sad moment for me, thinking,
Mm.
and how many of my fans or supporters haven't quite got it? And then I realized, that's not really the part that I control, nor is it my responsibility. It's for the people that maybe are looking for insight or looking for reflection or are yet to make up their mind or find agreement in some of the things that I'm sharing. It's for the people like yourself that would take the time to listen. And I feel like a lot of people comment on the lyrics and that the subject matter and the lyrics have really resonated with people. So that was my intention. I hope it resonates with folks on that honest, vulnerable, authentic. Some people have described it as bold, being quite bold to take on some of these subject matter. But I think if we're not doing that as artists, we're not really doing our job. If we're always singing about, a breakup song and poor fellow me kind of attitude, I think that's hey, I think there's 1,000 of them, and they're obviously popular, but it's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do love songs, and I didn't want to do breakup songs. I really wanted to write about more challenging material, um, and hopefully I've achieved that. And but yeah, I do wonder whether I don't think everyone gets it the way that you get it. I think a lot of people do, though.
Yeah, that's good. So, would you say overall then that therapy is an album of hope or an album of conflict?
Both.
Both.
Both, yeah. I think it's an album of internal conflict and um and finding the hope and optimism in that. And I think it doesn't lead into dramatics. It wrestles with honest realities and it talks to them in a very personal kind of a way, like a conversation nearly, similar to what we're doing now, And I think songs like My Bing Eye probably reflect that really, really well.
Yeah, nice. Now, Chasing Ghosts are going to be hitting the road for the Therapy Australian tour next month, starting in Adelaide on June the 6th. Then you hit Ballarat, Melbourne, Sydney, finish up here in Brisbane on the 14th of June, mate. So are you playing mostly material from the new album or are you going to have a bit of a cross section?
I think there's definitely a few songs that we wouldn't be able to play a set and not play. I think
Mm-hmm.
there could be a mini riot. So we would definitely would play some of the classic songs that people have come to cherish. But we do want to share the new singles and some real tasty bits from this new album. Um, I think what's great about it is, record drops May 16th. We don't hit the road till June 6th. So it'll give people an opportunity to get their ears around it. So I'm super excited. we finish that tour, and then I'll be straight the next day to Hobart to play a festival down here. So it's going to be a big couple of weeks, and we're just so excited because we want to see, all those fans that have come out from all the other records and over the last, however many years. So we're hoping to catch up with a lot of old faces and new faces on this one.
Nice. And where's the best place for people to find out more information about the tour and get themselves a copy of the album?
Uh, Best places, jump on social media, find Chasing Ghosts on Instagram, Facebook. There's a Chasing Ghosts website, www.chasingghost.com.au. Or you could go to the Destroy All Lines online
Website.
presence. Their website. Yeah, words. I was looking for words.
I'll help you out, mate.
Thanks, I appreciate it. It's the baby brain. Um, yeah, I think if you could jump on DAL's website, you can get all the details there. Typical places most people would find stuff.
Nice. Now, before I let you go, bro, I've actually introduced a new segment since last time we spoke. I've got a new one called Photo Bomb. So basically, before I chatted with you, I've gone online, I've trolled your social media, and I found a couple of photos I want to know a little bit more about. So the
Brilliant.
first one I got is, are you actually making out with a real life cobra in this photo?
Ah, yes, that is a real life cobra. That
What
is,
the?
I went to India and spent, I bought a ticket in and a ticket out 6 weeks later. And my plan was whatever happens between these two tickets, I've got to be at the bottom of the country and get to the top of the country within 6 weeks. And I didn't really have a plan, and this happened as as a consequence. Picking up cobras, yes, it was. I think, and this is kind of sad because I'm against animal cruelty, but I think that they might actually knock their fangs out when they're
Right.
quite little and they don't tell anyone. And when I grew up in the bush, I used to catch snakes as a kid all the time. That was what bush kids did. So when I seen this fella picking up the cobra and the cobra had no problems with him, I was just like, yeah, I'll do it. Let's go. And he's like, oh, anyone and no one to do it. I was like, yeah. And as soon as I did it, as you can see, other people plucked up the courage to do it. But I thought, nah, I reckon this is a bit of a scam. I reckon this one's pretty safe.
Did you kiss it on the neck? Like you see people kissing it on the head. Did you go
Yeah,
in?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. I don't care if I knew the teeth were gone. I would still not have the
I did
balls to
it.
do
Well, I
that,
didn't
bro.
know. No one admitted that
I
was the case. I
still
just
wouldn't do it if
assumed.
I. That's awesome. Now the other one I've got for you is this a gentleman by the name of Sam Newman wearing a kilt?
This is, oh my goodness, yeah. I'm surprised. I don't know where that was. Yeah, this is a dude that I think is an absolute wanker. At the time, I didn't think that. I didn't know much about him. I knew he was an AFL player because I'd come from the northern states, so I was a bit ignorant. And I thought he was a very good host, and I thought he was charismatic and whatnot, and we had some great banter. And then I watched several years of Sam acting like a real ignorant douchebag,
Dickhead.
and I felt
Yeah.
really disappointed that that's the best leadership he could bring to the table.
Yeah, I actually ummed and ahed about putting this one in because I wasn't sure if you'd want to
That's
talk
all.
about it or not.
No,
But
well,
it's true. I was the same, man. Like I used to worship the ground he walked on. I thought he was the funniest bloke in the world. And then a couple of incidents happened, and it's just like,
I think it's crazy, right? Is that a friend of mine was like, "Do you know?" I know what you're like, and do you know what this guy's history is? And I was like, nah. And the same thing happened when I had a photo of me and old mate from Rose Tattoo, and some people were like, hey, I just letting you know, heads up, this is what these guys are about when they're not sort of hanging out with you trying to be cool. And I'm like, all right, well. It's pretty disappointing stuff because, they're nice enough chaps to work with in a
yeah,
professional capacity. But I think once you start having open white supremacists on your podcast, I think that's a wrap. It's time for you to go to the nursing home with the old white supremacists and I can't really say it on your.
Mm. There's no turning back from something like that. No turning back at
It's
all.
disappointing. It's disappointing.
Jimmy, well, thanks for your time, bro. I always love speaking with you, bro. I always leave the
Likewise.
conversation feeling I've learned something, mate. So I'm going to be coming to the Brisbane show on the 14th for sure, and looking forward to
Deadly.
shaking your hand, my friend.
Absolutely. We'll have a beer together. Thank you so much.